A mysterious name whispered among shadowy corridors and half glimpsed in forgotten documents. Operation Narnia. Pause for a moment and allow your mind to conjure the image. The snowy lamplight, the wardrobe just barely ajar, an entry to another world where nothing is as it seems. But tonight, we don't travel through an enchanted forest or meet talking fauns. Instead, we venture quietly into the realm where fiction blurs with fact, where illusions are spun and secrets are guarded at the highest stakes of geopolitics. Imagine it, Operation Narnia, the code reportedly chosen by a nation to cloak an assassination campaign in the language of childhood fantasy. Why would Israel, known for calculated precision and layers of secrecy, name an operation after a fairy tale land? The rumors are as tantalizing as they are unsettling. A clandestine series of missions, stretching across years and borders, designed to silence the sharpest minds of Iran's nuclear program. Names like Masoud Ali Mohammadi and Mohsen Fakhrizadeh drift through the news, each a scientist whose life ended under circumstances as shrouded as the campaign that may have targeted them. Iran blames foreign enemies, Israel remains silent, and the world's great powers look away politely, as though the mystery might quietly vanish. But, as with the wardrobe's promise of adventure and danger intertwined, stories swirl around. Operation Narnia, some dismissed as fantasy, others whispered with a knowing shiver by those closer to the game. Journalists, intelligence analysts, seasoned diplomats, they all agree on only one thing. If there is a truth behind the name, it lies in a labyrinth where fact and fiction walk hand in hand. Tonight, as you settle in and your mind begins its gentle drift toward sleep, allow yourself to wonder, why Narnia? What world was conjured, hidden just under the surface of our own, to justify such a name? Was it a wry nod to the operation's ability to slip unnoticed through layers of reality? Or perhaps a reflection of an intelligence war as strange, perilous, and otherworldly as any fairy tale? As the shadows lengthen and the ordinary slips away, we will journey through stories seldom explored, half remembered, and rarely explained. Let us step quietly into the world behind the code name, the vanished, the invisible, the unsolved, guided by the calming rhythm of history's mysteries, unfolding like snow gently falling on a silent street. When you're ready, we'll leave the lamplight behind and pass beyond the wardrobe into a shadowed world where the real Operation Narnia, if it ever truly existed, awaits your discovery. Imagine the city of Tehran in the earliest hours, its ancient hills holding the last whispers of night, streets misted and nearly silent. The air is cool, almost coldened. The day's promise is veiled behind a gentle slope of clouds. In a small North Tehran neighborhood, life stirs quietly. Windows blink awake, water begins to simmer on stovetops, and light touches the balcony plants where neighbors tend them each day. Here, Masoud Ali Mohammadi moves through the intimate choreography of his morning. A respected physics professor, known as much for his kindness as his scientific rigor, he finds comfort in routine. He brews tea, thumb trailing absently along the curve of a cup. He laces his shoes, the same pair he has worn along countless campus hallways. There is, in his movements, the soothing rhythm of many years spent cultivating knowledge, of lessons taught and papers graded beneath flickering desk lamps. The scent of strong tea lingers in the apartment, blending with old wood and the subtle tang of starched linen. Outside, the city prepares for sunlight. Vendors quietly arrange their wares, children ready books for school. Past the rustling news kiosks, down a leafy, unremarkable street, Masoud steps into the world that trusted him. The path is so familiar. Birds calling curt, quiet notes overhead, while distant cars hum reassuringly along the main boulevard. Neighbors nod in passive greeting. There is little to suggest that this day, unlike the 1,000 mornings before it, will unravel the fabric of the community. Yet in the background, there is something more, a tension, nearly imperceptible, that has settled over those who work on Iran's most closely guarded projects. A scientist's life, seemingly quiet and benign, has become laced with silent threats. Rumors ripple in academic circles. Security officers walk patrol on university grounds. Tones are lowered. Glances exchanged just a little too quickly. Moment by moment, as Tehran breathes into the new day, the stillness is holding, if only for an instant more. Unseen forces lurk, decisions made in distant rooms, threads invisible but tightly pulled. The edge of the unknown presses gently at the city's waking calm. Now, let us move forward, a few quiet steps further down Masood Ali Mohammadi's familiar neighborhood street. The air remains brisk, thin clouds filtering the weak sunlight, and the city seems to hold its breath. On this morning, the smaller details, the swerve of a sparrow, the distant chime of a bicycle bell, seem to settle in slow motion. But woven amongst these everyday moments is something foreign, a sense of quiet anticipation, a stillness to absolute as Masood approaches. His vehicle, the ordinary world, unravels. It happens without warning. A single, ear-splitting explosion rips through the fog of dawn. A motorcycle, parked just so, concealing the device that ends a life and sends shockwaves across Tehran and beyond. Glass falls in splinters, car alarms wail in a discordant chorus, and a gentle man who cherished both knowledge and peace is suddenly gone. What remains after the smoke drifts away is more than destruction. The neighborhood is transformed. Windows open cautiously, voices murmur in the alleys. Fear rises like a tide, mixing with anger, bewilderment, and unspeakable loss. Authorities descend upon the scene with urgency, their faces solemn, their questions hushed. Onlookers draw near as if to anchor themselves to the moment, to remind themselves that reality has, for them, forever shifted. As the news spreads through the city, whispers grow into rumors. Was Ali Mohammadi merely an accidental victim, or was this a targeted act, a message sent by invisible hands? The government quickly accuses foreign agents, fingers pointed across borders to Israeli services, an old spectre in a new context. Western observers wonder, what did he know? What secrets did he keep? Could the death of a physicist ripple outward to affect the delicate dance of nations? Yet, beneath the thunder of speculation, the human texture remains. Colleagues mourn in quiet clusters across the university campus, where chalk still dusts blackboards and lecture halls seem hollowed out by absence. Students gather, lighting candles that gutter softly in the chill. In faculty lounges, papers remain unfinished, sentences abandoned mid-thought, as minds struggle to balance grief with the practicalities of fear. In this unfolding story, the ordinary has been shattered. Trust has been punctured. Absence is a silence that settles deep, a warning cloaked in tragedy, a question mark at the threshold of every scientist's door. The city is slow to wake that day, wrapped in uncertainty, as news of Masood Ali Mohammadi's death flows quietly through radio broadcasts and whispered conversation. Soon, the ripples reach far beyond Tehran's leafy lanes. The story is covered in all the ways that such stories tend to be. First with breathless urgency, then with rumor and speculation, and finally with the hush that follows, when nothing is ever quite explained. Iranian officials move swiftly, condemning the killing in stern, practiced tones. There are accusations leveled in press conferences. Foreign hands, foreign motives. Israel is never named outright, yet the implication is clear, an open secret spoken through clenched jaws. In the weeks that follow, government posters honoring the fallen scientist appear on lampposts and billboards, his gentle face transfigured into an emblem of national sacrifice. Within the university community, the air grows dense with fear and speculation. Faculty members hesitate at their office doors. Students glance sideways at unfamiliar faces. Though none can say it openly, all are aware that the danger is not abstract. If one can be taken, so too can another. Some quietly discuss the wisdom of continuing their research. A few discreetly pursue positions abroad, searching for safer ground. The rhythm of academic life becomes more careful, more measured. Abroad, the reaction is a collage of subtle maneuvering and veiled commentary. Analysts on international networks debate Iran's nuclear intentions and speculate openly about the involvement of Israeli intelligence. Western governments issue formal condolences and call for restraint, their words diplomatic but carefully non-committal. There is a sense among outside observers that something larger is unfolding, pieces moving on a board where the rules are unclear, and where a single lost life can signal the turn of an entire strategy. Yet no clear answers emerge. Official inquiries stall. Foreign embassies remain purposefully silent. In the absence of certainty, legend begins to swirl. Stories of shadow networks and high-stakes operations, of scientists surveilled, followed, and ultimately silenced for what they knew. As evening settles again over Tehran, candles burn down. 2 pools of wax in memory of Masoud Ali Mohammadi, a bright mind dimmed too soon. The city returns to its routines, but the sense of safety has been quietly, irrevocably altered. In the shadowed aftermath of one silenced scientist, the collective gaze slowly shifts to another. His name, until then barely whispered outside secure Iranian laboratories and closed governmental meetings, begins to surface. With a peculiar gravity. Unlike his colleagues, Fakhrizadeh has always been an enigma. No public interviews, almost no photographs. A figure wrapped tightly in layers of bureaucratic secrecy. Western intelligence services, the few journalists, brave or informed enough to pursue the story, and Iran's own citizens begin to sense the edges of a crucial presence. Someone described as the father of Iran's nuclear ambitions to his peers. Fakhrizadeh is known for his methodical mind and his dedication to science, yet his daily life is wreathed in precaution. Colleagues mention strict routines, dedicated routes to work, unavoidable security details, a circle of trust narrowed to only a handful. The places he frequents, the meetings he attends, are always shrouded in a kind of orchestrated ambiguity, as if every step were choreographed for invisibility. Even those who work nearby might only glimpse him through a closing door, a hushed corridor, or perhaps a set of instructions filtered through layers of intermediaries. Whispers in the Iranian scientific community refer to him with a blend of respect and weary fear. Some see him as a symbol, proof of Iran's determination to stand shoulder to shoulder with global nuclear powers. Others cannot help but feel the weight of what such knowledge brings. Recognition, certainly, but also relentless danger. In the corridors of power, his name is spoken in low tones, each utterance pregnant with the awareness that too much attention could bring disaster. Outside Iran, intelligence dossiers gather, some sporting deliberate gaps, others brimming with conjecture. Fakhrizadeh's role becomes a near-mythological fixation for foreign agencies. Is he the architect of a weapons program, or merely the diligent steward of civilian research? Leaked memos from Western capitals reference him with the same mixture of awe and frustration that might greet a ghost. Always present, always intangible. Inside Iran's nuclear facilities, daily life adapts. Security is tightened further. Routines are altered unpredictably. Researchers share fewer details, keep records closer, look over their shoulders a little more often. In the quiet spaces between experiments, the names of those who have vanished linger heavily in the air. And beneath it all, a growing knowledge. In the calculus of secret wars, anonymity is sometimes the only armor. Step gently now into the world inhabited by Iran's scientific elite. A world where discovery and invention are always shadowed by unseen dangers. Within well-guarded laboratories and academic halls lined with banners of national pride, the atmosphere has changed irrevocably. What once was propelled by curiosity and collaboration is gradually overtaken by caution, discretion, and a wary silence. For these scientists, each day unfolds with both purpose and trepidation. Their mornings begin not only with coffee and research plans, but also with subtle rituals of vigilance. Routes to work are thoughtfully alternated, arrival times staggered, entrances and exits reviewed. The regular rhythm of lectures and research meetings is often interrupted by unscheduled security briefings, new protocols, and the presence of quiet, watchful escorts in dark civilian clothes. Interpersonal trust, once the stable ground for collaboration, has become fragile. Email exchanges and phone calls are guarded, every conversation measured. Rumors flutter about, new names on secret watch lists, faces glimpsed in the wrong place at the wrong time, friends and colleagues abruptly reassigned or sent away, leaving desks untouched and research unfinished. The old camaraderie is interrupted by moments of alertness. Someone pausing at the sound of footsteps, a wary glance exchanged before speaking openly. Yet the drive for progress persists. Ambitious young postgraduates continue to arrive in search of opportunity, hoping to contribute to a cause seen as pivotal to Iran's future. Some accept the burden of secrecy as part of their patriotic duty. For others, the mounting pressure feels suffocating, eroding the simple joys of scientific pursuit. Despite outward normalcy, they sense themselves caught in a current beyond their control, a silent conflict spiraling through their lives, altering destinies in subtle and sometimes tragic ways. Internationally, this new climate is interpreted in varying ways. To some observers, it is proof that the shadow war is escalating, that invisible hands are reaching ever deeper into Iran's scientific core. To others, it marks the resilience of a discipline under siege, the ability to adapt in adversity, to find new ways of surviving in a world that seems more dangerous by the day. As evening descends in Tehran, windows darken a little earlier. In laboratories and apartments alike, the ritual of vigilance continues. The city's very air seems thickened by the knowledge that somewhere, just beyond sight, the instruments of an unseen war are always at work. It is late autumn, and the edge of winter drifts over the hills northwest of Tehran. The air is crisp and clear, the sunlight diluted by thin clouds. In this tranquil setting, Mason Fakhrizadeh's convoy makes its way through Absard, a satellite town that once promised distance and safety from the fevered heart of the capital. The roads wind gently, trees sway, and the world seems momentarily at peace. But peace For Fakhrizadeh and those tasked with his protection is an illusion maintained by vigilance. His life has long been nested in layers of precaution, security cars before and behind, armed guards scanning the gentle slopes and quiet driveways, schedules never repeated. On this November afternoon in 2020, these routines are suddenly and dramatically insufficient. Without warning, the convoy is ambushed. A volley of gunfire erupts, slicing the silence. Some accounts speak of snipers concealed along the road. Others whisper of sophisticated remote-operated weapons triggered from afar. The precise details are shrouded in the secrecy that guards such operations. What is certain is that the attack is swift, devastating, and deliberate. Within minutes, cars are riddled, their engines silenced. Bodyguards scramble, but the assailants seem almost spectral, present and then gone, leaving only chaos and sorrow. In their wake, in the aftermath, rumors quickly eclipse facts. Iranian authorities blame foreign agents, Mossad, almost by rote, though no clear evidence is publicly offered. Some claim the attack was orchestrated with artificial intelligence, a marvel of remote warfare. Others suggest a meticulously planned, traditional ambush. The official story, repeated in somber tones on Iranian state television, is that Fakhrizadeh was martyred for his scientific achievements, a hero sacrificed on the altar of progress. As one commentator puts it, the funeral, when it comes, is an affair of both grandeur and intimacy. High-ranking officials speak in grave, measured voices, promising retribution. Family, friends, and colleagues stand quietly, their grief mingled with a collective sense of vulnerability, a realization that none among them are truly safe. Across Iran, images of Fakhrizadeh join those of other fallen scientists. Faces framed by garlands, underscored by poetry and slogans that elevate them to symbols of national resistance. Internationally, the reaction is an uneasy echo. Some world leaders call for de-escalation. Others tacitly endorse strikes against potential proliferation. Israel says nothing. Western powers issue carefully worded statements condemning violence while avoiding direct accusations. The identity of the assailants remains as elusive and as haunting as the code name whispered in the corridors. Operation Narnia. As night falls over Tehran, Fakhrizadeh's name becomes part of the unfolding legend, and across scientific circles, the question sharpens to a point: who will be next? As days pass, their chill drawn closer by grief, the death of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh seeps into the fabric of everyday life in Iran. On the streets of Tehran, in the lanes of Absard, and across university courtyards, his absence is more than an individual's loss. It is a communal bruise, sudden and conspicuous. Public mourning is both orchestrated and sincere. Large portraits of Fakhrizadeh, bearing formal titles and reverent verses, hang from buildings and bridges. News programs play somber dirges, their anchors offering eulogies in quiet voices. The language of martyrdom, familiar from decades of struggle and conflict, is invoked with solemn regularity. Candlelit vigils and prayer circles gather in city squares and mosques, where the low murmur of grief is woven with words of defiance, insisting on hope and endurance. Yet beneath the national pageantry, a different, quieter current flows among scientists, students, and citizens. In the science faculties, there is a subtle emptying. Offices are locked, labs go unvisited, research projects pause indefinitely. Some students, once animated and hopeful, now lower their eyes and their voices, unsure what can safely be discussed. Colleagues of Fakhrizadeh linger in hallways longer than usual, clustered in muted conversations, remembering small kindnesses and gentle encouragements. The rhythm of teaching and inquiry is disrupted by the specter of risk. Families of scientists to recalibrate their routines. Some urge their loved ones to avoid high-profile work, to take sabbaticals, or to quietly seek opportunities overseas. Cafes that once buzzed with debate over physics and politics embrace a hush, each patron wondering who might be listening, or what quiet warning might arrive next. This grief becomes a shared language, a collective reckoning with fear and resilience. The state draws lines of unity and resistance, but the private world of inquiry and intellect feels tangibly diminished, tentative, waiting for another shadow to pass. Outside Iran, the events are studied with growing concern. Academics around the world pen cautious messages of solidarity, even as some are advised to avoid overt contact with Iranian colleagues. News columns, think tanks, and intelligence agencies analyze the pattern, adding Fakhrizadeh's fate to the archive of the world's unresolved conflicts. The city's pace resumes, unavoidably altered. Each scientist carries on, a little less certain, a little more watchful. The echo of Fakhrizadeh's life and loss shaping the cadence of their days. Beyond the streets of Iran and the cloisters of academic halls, Mason Fakhrizadeh's death sparks a wave of cautious, quietly charged reactions across the globe. Governments respond with calibrated restraint. Some voices are raised in condemnation, others in carefully measured silence. International headlines flash his name for a few days, then give way to broader themes: nuclear tensions, regional security, the shadow games of foreign intelligence in Washington, Paris, London, and Moscow. Diplomatic statements are drafted with meticulous care, striving to balance condemnation of violence against the unspoken realities of geopolitics. The United Nations calls for calm but offers little direct intervention. Western leaders, aware of both the delicacy of the region and their own competing interests, limit their responses to expressions of concern and appeals for moderation. For a brief moment, global powers pause, weighing whether this targeted loss will tilt the scales toward escalation, or if silence is the safer response. Among intelligence services, the mood is different, more focused, more analytical, almost clinical. Analysts dissect the attack, its method, its precision, its implication for ongoing efforts to contain Iran's nuclear pursuits. Some Western officials, off the record, frame Fakhrizadeh's killing as a message. Others caution that such actions might only accelerate clandestine research or spur retaliation. In security briefings, terms like surgical strike and psychological impact recur, phrases meant to capture the complex calculus underlying these rare stakes operations. International scientists and academics respond with a blend of empathy and anxiety. In private correspondences and within professional associations, there is a sense of shared vulnerability, a realization that those who push the boundaries of knowledge may also draw the notice of those who traffic in secrecy and power. Calls for solidarity ripple through these communities, but are carried out with gentle discretion, wary of the political entanglements that such contact might bring. Media coverage, for a moment, illuminates the human side of clandestine warfare. Profiles of Fakhrizadeh's quiet dedication and his tragic end contrast sharply with the abstract language of policy and security. Interviews with former colleagues or Western experts, framed by respectful distance, try to give shape to the man behind the myth. Yet inevitably, the broader context robs the story of neat closure. Another chapter in a long-running narrative where certainty is rare, and the dividing line between fact and conjecture is never fully established. As diplomats, officials, and citizens around the world reflect on Fakhrizadeh's fate, the event grows smaller in the ceaseless churn of world affairs. Yet, for those closest to the heart of the conflict, the reverberations linger, a subtle, constant reminder that in the contest of power and secrecy, every life carries weight far beyond its own time. And in the months that follow, Iran's scientific community withdraws further, drawing its circle tighter against the gathering storm. Laboratories, once proud of their breakthroughs, grow quieter, more sequestered. Security becomes both a physical and psychological fixture. Armed guards now stand sentinel at entrances previously open to the hopeful energy of youth. Gateways, once symbolic of intellectual exchange, are monitored by faces trained to watch for notice of trouble. Not talent, daily life, for Iran's nuclear scientists changes in subtle but profound ways. Research teams adopt a regimented rhythm, their freedom of movement constrained by layers of protocol. Colleagues walk to parking lots together after dark, eyes scanning the length of every streetlight's pool of radiance. Small acts, once thought of as routine, grabbing a coffee, chatting openly in the courtyard, posting on social media, are consciously revised or altogether abandoned. Privacy becomes imperative when ensuring safety. The anxiety is not confined to the workplace. Family routines morph as well. Spouses confer over daily plans with more urgency. Children are shepherded a little closer with gentle but unspoken vigilance. Summer holidays abroad, once a cherished respite, now seem fraught with risk and potential scrutiny. Even celebrations are scaled back, the joy of a new finding or an academic promotion dimmed by the knowledge that recognition might attract unwanted attention. Despite this atmosphere, research goes on. There is resilience here, a determination to pursue knowledge, even as the dangers multiply. For some, this determination grows out of a strong sense of patriotism, a conviction that scientific advancement is a form of resistance, a mark of national pride. For others, it is simple inertia, the continuation of a life's work that began long before secrecy and fear became daily companions. Occasionally, a breakthrough is achieved, a paper is published, a new technique reported with care. These moments offer brief reprieve, allowing for quiet pride and a fleeting return to normalcy. But always, there is the awareness that visibility brings its own risk. The greater the success, the closer the scrutiny. This is the new normal for Iran's nuclear scientists. Lives lived in half-light, ambitions pressed beneath the weight of vigilance, and a resilience that comes not just from hope, but from endurance, and the silent pact shared among those who dwell within the shrinking circle. As the seasons shift and the world spins quietly onward, the lives of Iran's embattled scientific minds settle into a delicate, steadfast resolve. They continue to unlock the secrets of atoms and energy, all while adapting to existence shaped by invisible threats. The tension of uncertainty, though pervasive, does not suppress their curiosity. Rather, it adds an element of gravity to their every choice, a silent companion that shapes ambition into something both sharper and more circumspect. In faculty apartments and hidden laboratories, scientists find gestures of comfort in small, careful ways. A shared latent tea, a handwritten note of encouragement, a book quietly passed along and cherished. Friendships harden under pressure, becoming both shield and solace. As colleagues depart for positions abroad or retreat into administrative obscurity, those who remain develop unspoken systems, check-ins, subtle signals, a careful attunement to changes in one another's daily rhythms. Dreams of publication and international accolades give way, at times, to more modest hopes that new research might proceed undisturbed, that loved ones will be spared worry, that tomorrow's commute will be as uneventful as today's. Even so, the sense of purpose is not entirely eclipsed by fear. Each experiment is still a step into the unknown, each solution to an equation still a moment of transcendence. In certain moments, the burden of vigilance feels lighter, the laughter of children echoing down a hallway, the quiet awe as a complex result comes into focus under a microscope. In these instances, the world narrows to what is essential: knowledge, kinship, the slow pulse of discovery. Scientists tell themselves that every generation before them has faced its own trials, its own uncertainties. Perhaps their vigilance, too, will become a habit, blending into the background hum of progress and time. Outside, history continues to murmur. Foreign observers speculate and theorize. Intelligence agencies file away their secret assessments, and new names cautiously join the ranks of those willing to reach for answers in the realm where knowledge and danger overlap. The shadow of Operation Narnia, whether real or myth, lingers at the edge of every story, a symbol of all that remains hidden, unresolved, and quietly enduring. Yet for those at the center, life is lived one careful, hopeful breath at a time. Among them grows a quiet resolve to endure, to adapt, and to carry forward the torch of curiosity in spite of everything that seeks to extinguish it. Now let us slip, as if through a hidden door, into the trembling half-light where rumor and reality entwine. In the world of intelligence and counterintelligence, even the code names possess a peculiar power. Operation Narnia, enigmatic, almost out of place, is first encountered in fragments and whispers. The offhand remark between analysts, the redacted line in an unclassified report, the murmured warning among foreign correspondents. The name appears not in sweeping declarations, but in the careful, almost accidental, brushstrokes of intelligence leaks. Among cables and confidential communiques, Narnia sits encoded within context. A footnote, a source's aside, a journalist's tantalizing hint in a late-night blog post. Rumors filter through the intelligence community in Tel Aviv, London, and Washington, carried inward on encrypted channels and whispered in the anonymous refuge of safe houses and back rooms. No one source can, or will, confirm the operation outright, but the pattern feels familiar. Unexplained accidents, sudden disappearances, and technological setbacks strike Iran's research teams. A satellite photo hints at a scorched truck. A publicly available obituary aligns oddly with a surge in diplomatic traffic. Those who follow the clues sense intentionality behind the string of events, but the reach of Operation Narnia, if real, is cloaked not only in silence but in purposeful contradiction. For intelligence professionals, the codename itself becomes a story. Why choose a reference to a children's fantasy? Perhaps it's a subtle in-joke, a comment on slipping between realities as spies and agents are trained to do. Perhaps it marks the operation's ability to reshape what is seen versus what is true, echoing the wardrobe through which one world gives way to another. For those on the outside, the effect is much the same as a fairy tale's opening lines. One is compelled further, compelled to know what may lie out of sight. Within this secretive maze, each answer yields more questions. The shape of the truth remains elusive, visible perhaps only to those both brave and careful enough to follow the wisps of story all the way to their blurred. Within the shifting shadows of geopolitical maneuvering, the quiet footfalls of spies and saboteurs echo softly, almost imperceptibly, across the years. Operation Narnia, whether imagined or implemented, is believed to have drawn from a long tradition of clandestine expertise, a convergence of operatives, sympathizers, and assets scattered from the European capitals to the bustling heart of Tel Aviv and deep into the hidden corners of Iran itself. In this world, espionage is not a matter of cinematic chases, but of quiet patience. An agent becomes fluent in the rhythms of a city, blending into a crowd or adopting the easy familiarity of a local secure drop points. Benches in forgotten parks, lockers in train stations, a folded note in a library book become the arteries through which information flows. Safe houses are arranged to resemble ordinary homes, visited in daylight by trusted couriers, and sometimes by those who suspect nothing. Sabotage, too, favors subtlety. A component in a centrifuge swapped for one designed to fail. Vehicles. Electronic systems quietly manipulated. Informants, sometimes under duress, sometimes motivated by ideology, receive instructions encrypted, passed along by someone who was almost a stranger, or perhaps hiding in plain sight. False businesses spring up overnight, seemingly innocuous on the surface, as bakeries, consultancy firms, or even language schools, each a screen for the careful cultivation of contacts and resources. Within Iran, the hunt for moles becomes an unending ritual, as paranoia and suspicion are woven into the daily routine. Counterintelligence operatives examine personnel files. Background checks are rehearsed and repeated. Even casual friendships are subject to review. The pressure is subtle but relentless, encouraging self-censorship, withdrawal, and silent compliance. Outside, Mossad and its collaborators are described in both mythic and human terms. Legends emerge of agents who can pass unseen for years, who orchestrate events through small gestures rather than grand actions. For every name known to the public, dozens drift unremarked, agents, assets, and double agents whose allegiances change with the shifting wind of necessity and fate. It is in this intricate dance, layers of misdirection, strands of trust and treachery, that the alleged machinery of Operation Narnia operates. Each piece moves quietly, gently nudging circumstances toward uncertainty and disruption. And always, those at the center of the storm carry their burdens in silence, aware that the most decisive moves in this shadow war are carried out with the gentlest touch. From time to time, the tightly clenched fist of secrecy opens ever so slightly, and the outside world is permitted a fleeting, ambiguous glance into the machinery of clandestine operations. These are the moments when leaks, whether accidental or meticulously engineered, cross into public consciousness, sparking new speculation and adding to the mythology of Operation Narnia. Some of the earliest and most tantalizing threads appear in obscure reports from international think tanks or in the digital margins of security analysts' newsletters. An unredacted name, a timeline that aligns too closely with a suspicious disappearance, or a newly declassified transcript. Each piece is small, incomplete, and yet weighted with significance for those alert to their implications. Occasionally, an intelligence defector or a disillusioned insider quietly contacts a journalist, wrapping revelations in layers of oblique language. A British paper runs a story pairing peculiar accidents in Iran's nuclear facilities with suspected Mossad active measures. Persian language social media bristles with speculation, weaving together real events and imagined intrigue, unmarked. Gravestones are cross-referenced with satellite images, and the rhythm of attacks is matched to known patterns in Israeli covert strategy. Among the most notorious unofficial disclosures is a set of emails leaked onto the dark web, purported correspondence between Western intelligence liaisons and local assets. The emails mention the Wardrobe Project, a phrase immediately seized upon by bloggers and fringe commentators as a potential synonym for Operation Narnia. Yet, hard proof remains elusive, always shadowed by plausible deniability and careful omissions. A name mentioned in one line disappeared the next. A map annotated with coordinates but no key. A list of targets found, then quietly erased in an official denial. For the intelligence community itself, such leaks are simultaneously dangerous and useful. Disinformation campaigns sometimes sow their own rumors, planted to disguise the true patterns of sabotage, to trap the unwary, or to spread confusion in rival agencies. Meanwhile, every new revelation prompts internal reviews. Procedures are updated, contacts relocated, operations suspended or rerouted. The effect is one of constant low-level uncertainty, both sides caught in a game where the rules are invented as they go along, and for the wider public, caught between awe, fear, and curiosity, these fleeting glimpses into the world of operation Narnia are both electrifying and unsettling. They are reminders that the line between myth and reality is slender indeed, especially where the stakes are highest. Delve with me now into the heart of a complex network, an intricate tapestry where boundaries blur and allegiances twist beneath the surface. If Operation Narnia existed in any form, it was not the work of a single agency, nor reliant upon one nation's ingenuity alone. Instead, its legend speaks of a collaborative web, myriad hands, each skilled in their own silent disciplines, working closely and occasionally in tension, to shape the invisible architecture of clandestine action at the center. The Israeli is widely presumed to be a premium mobile, a force of patient strategy, legendary within intelligence circles for its blend of subtlety and audacity. Yet Mossad, for all its resources, rarely moves in isolation. Quiet assistance may come from trusted Western partners, their own agencies contributing insights harvested from intercepted communications, surveillance drones, or years of cultivating local informants in the Persian-speaking world. The boundaries of cooperation are purposefully ambiguous. Sometimes, it is unacknowledged logistical support, a military plane refueled at an Allied airstrip, a critically timed alert from a listening post in the Mediterranean. At other times, the collaboration is less direct, technology supplied discreetly, forged passports crafted by experts who never meet, the temporary shelter of a friendly third country for a fleeing asset. Behind these maneuvers lie broader shared interests. For some Western powers, the interception or slowing of Iran's nuclear ambitions is a priority. Yet the politics of direct action are complicated, and public deniability is paramount. Thus, Mossad and its associates operate in spaces others do not wish to enter, handling the riskiest moves on the chessboard. From Paris to Baku, Vienna to Athens, embassies buzz at odd hours with encrypted calls, and travelers on nondescript business become conduits for vital data or resources. On rare occasions, conflicting priorities emerge. Allied agencies, even As they coordinate, pursue their own goals, information is filtered, withheld, or deliberately altered before being passed along. Within the collaborative web, trust is always provisional. The shifting sands of diplomacy mean that yesterday's confidant can be tomorrow's competitor. For observers, journalists, and even many operatives, the full picture remains always out of reach, glimpsed only in incomplete mosaic. Still, the rhythm of this collaboration shapes outcomes in subtle ways. Delays bought with a whisper, discoveries made possible by an anonymous tip, crises averted or, occasionally, quietly allowed to unfold. And so, the legend of Operation Narnia is fed not by any one nation or agency, but by a perpetual interplay. A fugue of intelligence quietly humming beneath the noise of everyday politics, guiding events with an invisible but practiced hand. As the legend of Operation Narnia seeps outwards, it becomes a prism through which each observer, participant, or investigator sees a different world. Every account is shaped by distance, physical, emotional, political. What emerges is not a singular narrative, but a cacophony of versions, rumors, and carefully constructed truths, splintering at the edges and reflecting back on one another in bewildering patterns. For Iran, the official version is that of heroic struggle and bitter. State broadcasts and newspaper editorials speak of foreign plots and martyrs lost to Zionist aggression, weaving personal tragedies into a larger tapestry of resistance and pride. The faces of fallen scientists are paired with patriotic melodies and solemn pledges of national unity. Within the halls of government and among sympathetic academics, there is little room for ambiguity. Every unexplained explosion or death is interpreted in the context of external sabotage and the eternal vigilance required to keep the nation's ambitions alive. Conversely, in Israeli and certain Western circles, public statements deny involvement, sometimes with force, more often with a calculated nonchalance that leaves the door perpetually cracked for deniability. On rare occasions, former officials hint at the logic. Disruption is preferable to open conflict, targeted pressure preferable to war. Yet internally, the mosaic is richer. Diplomats debate the ethics and efficacy of targeted assassinations. Intelligence officers weigh successes against uncontrollable consequences, and policymakers consider the ripple effects. Diplomatic backlash, inspiration for reciprocal acts, the unintended hardening of resolve. Then, there are the voices of the analysts, scholars, and journalists, each attempting to piece together the puzzle from leaked files, coded language, and the slow accumulation of public records. Their versions tend to be tentative, shrouded in caveats. One researcher might see Operation Narnia as a campaign of deliberate psychological warfare, another as a manufactured myth designed to terrify and misdirect. Blogs and commentaries proliferate, each one folding new details into an evolving, never quite complete narrative for those closest to the events. Ex-colleagues, family members, the day-to-day staff in the orbit of targeted scientists. The truth is most personal and also most unknowable. Suspicion can attach itself to benign coincidences, an unfamiliar repairman, a friend's sudden move abroad, a glitch in an access badge. Over time, collective memory builds its own stories, blending rumor and recollection, longing and pride, mourning and the hope that sacrifice might mean something more than senseless loss. It is in this swirl of accounts that the truth of Operation Narnia sinks and rises, never settling. Each story is a fragment of a larger, shifting whole, evidence that In the world of secrets and shadows, certainty is a comfort rarely given. Amid headlines and diplomatic volleys, the story of Operation Narnia quietly rests on the shoulders of many whose names will likely never be known. These are the forgotten players, the drivers, translators, scientists, mechanics, and informants, woven invisibly into the operation's fabric. Their roles may be fleeting, their actions disguised as routine, yet they are the intricate gears that turn great designs. Imagine the scientists approached late at night with an invitation to collaborate or an offer that cannot be refused. Coercion, laced with promise, or perhaps thinly veiled threat, or the low-level embassy employee whose daily routine includes the simple act of passing a folder or relaying a phrase through casual conversation, not always knowing which information is crucial and which is designed to mislead. For each headline target, there are a dozen others. Technicians who alter shipping manifests, engineers who install devices that seem ordinary but are laced with fatal flaws, guards who open or close a gate at just the right and wrong moment. Consider as well the foreign students, contractors, and travelers who find themselves unknowing participants in this ballet of shadows. Their presence and movement exploited to mask or facilitate the actions of others. Some suspect, but many do not. Swept along by the currents of their own ambitions and daily distractions. The risk is rarely dramatic. There are no duels in moonlit alleys, but rather the slow creep of anxiety. The unmarked vehicle parked too long near an apartment block, the unexplained absence of a friend or colleague, the growing suspicion that routines are being observed and analyzed. Sometimes loyalty and ideology are genuine. Other times, cooperation is extracted under pressure. A bargain made to ensure a family's safety or a relative's passage abroad. In Iran, the cost of suspected collaboration is steep. Surveillance, interrogations, careers ended in the space of a quiet conversation, or sometimes a quiet vanishing. Outside Iran, those assisting covert operations often pass unseen back into daily life, carrying memories that must remain unspoken even within their own families. Rarely are these human instruments honored beyond a footnote or whispered reminiscence. They drift back into obscurity, their contributions marked only by the persistent silence of all involved. Yet their lives, with all their fragility and courage, are what turn myth into reality, and what make operations like Narnia, if it ever truly existed, more than just a fable spun for the history books. Within the shadowy world of covert action, the archives themselves become repositories not just of records, but of rumors, omissions, and ghosts. Documents related to alleged operations like Narnia, declassified files, intercepted communications. Intelligence analyzes form a paper trail as notable for its gaps as for its revelations. Every annotated margin, every redacted passage, every lost memo whispers of secrets still concealed. Those who search for answers often begin with open sources, lightly censored cables, governmental briefings, and parliamentary inquiries. Sometimes there's a tantalizing detail, a timeline that matches an unexplained incident, the codename Narnia surfaced in an archival search, or a budgetary line item suggesting high-level authorization for an unnamed special project. But more often than not, these fragments are surrounded by blank space, sanitized by legal requirements or the quiet calculus of national security. Occasionally, documents intended for a closed audience are leaked, their pages scanned and shared, deep within encrypted forums or investigative collectives. In these rare windows, one might glimpse operational summaries or after-action reports, heavy with technical jargon and studiously vague references. There might be mention of assets neutralized or project disruption, terms that sit heavy with implication but offer little in the way of narrative closure. Some researchers turn to the archives of allied or adversarial intelligence services, hoping that what is omitted in one country's record might appear as a curiosity in another's. Memos shuffled through CIA, Mossad or MI6 repositories are cross-referenced with Iranian parliamentary proceedings and European police bulletins. Sometimes it is the absence of mention that speaks loudest. An operation acknowledged everywhere but on the record. Its reality preserved through carefully scripted ambiguity. Perhaps most haunting are the documents that once existed, and clearly no longer do. Indexes that jump from item 15 to item 17. Boxes tagged as misplaced, lists whose final entries are simply redacted. For archivists and investigators, these gaps become riddles. Could the truth, finally, be found in what everyone agrees must never be written down? Within these archives, certainty is as rare as sunlight in a winter cellar. Patterns emerge, but always through haze. An image glimpsed in fog, a voice echoing behind a closed door. What the documents reveal is not a neatly packaged history, but an ongoing performance where what is known and what is guessed at are forever intertwined, and so, the legend of Operation Narnia continues its quiet drift through official records, an unofficial memory, real enough to haunt the footnotes, yet forever evasive, flickering just out of reach. In the tangled thicket between the known and the unknowable, myth acquires a strange and potent life. The name Operation Narnia, exotic, almost whimsical, serves as an unexpectedly powerful vessel for both genuine intrigue and deliberate misdirection. Within intelligence communities, the myth of such an operation can be as effective as any real action, inspiring caution, confusion, and even fear in those who find themselves its possible targets. Here, the power of imagination cannot be underestimated. Stories of daring operations, ghostly saboteurs, and fantastical high-tech assassinations circulate among diplomats, scientists, and the broader public. Some are grounded in evidence. Others are embroidered with speculative details until they shimmer between plausibility and invention. Each time the tale is retold, on television, in an analyst's report, on a late-night call between colleagues, its uncertainty grows, making it even harder to dismiss. Disinformation agents, understanding the utility of myth, sometimes nurture these stories intentionally. They leak tantalizing fragments, a code name in an otherwise routine communique. Offhand references to Narnia in the context of security briefings, a source who claims improbable feats of espionage. Each detail, whether true or crafted, blurs the boundary between reality and rumor. The uncertainty itself becomes a weapon. It causes those in Iran's nuclear program to double-check routines, to look over their shoulders, to suspect the innocent gesture or careless word. For those outside, the myth is equally compelling. Commentators and policy wonks debate with authority the likelihood of Narnia's existence, drawing connections between disparate events, sometimes inventing elaborate timelines and relationships. Popular culture absorbs the stories, creating a feedback loop between fiction and fact. Books, articles, and podcasts mirror and magnify the shadow play until the line separating history and narrative is nearly erased. Within Iran, the myth can serve both as a warning and a rallying cry. For some, it justifies increased vigilance, aggressive counterintelligence measures, and crackdowns on perceived internal threats. For others, it is an example of psychological warfare waged by external enemies determined to undermine Iranian morale and sow fear. And so, Operation Narnia, real, imagined, or somewhere in between, remains a testament to the immense force of story in a world dense with secrets. In the end, myth is both shield and sword, a fog as thick as any physical barrier and just as effective in keeping the deepest truths hidden from view. When myths and truths entwine, their effects are seldom fleeting. In the lengthening shadow of Operation Narnia, whatever its reality, the culture of suspicion settles in for the long term. For Iran, each rumor of sabotage, each unexplained death or incident becomes a catalyst for sweeping changes in both policy and everyday life. Inside laboratories and universities, security culture tightens with each fresh whisper. New procedures are introduced, stricter sign-in logs, surveillance cameras extending into once private spaces, bag checks at campus gates, randomized security sweeps conducted with quiet regularity. Trusted academic advisors are counseled on how to spot unusual behavior among their colleagues. Foreign visits and conference invitations now require extra layers of approval. Each trip away weighed against concerns of compromised safety. There is an unspoken understanding. Vigilance is no longer an exception, but a constant condition. At the highest levels of government, the myth, whether believed in whole or part, serves as justification for policy shifts. Official statements frame investment in counterintelligence and state surveillance as essential acts of defense. Legislative bodies debate new funding for advanced security measures or expansions of domestic surveillance programs. News outlets highlight patriotic duty, urging citizens to report suspicious activities, reinforcing unity against unseen adversaries. Over time, increased secrecy becomes a matter of public pride as well as security. Diplomatic relationships are also shaped by these cycles of suspicion. Iranian embassies and consulates tighten internal communication protocols. Staff rotations are accelerated to prevent local infiltration. Abroad, Iranian scientists are sometimes viewed with wariness, their applications and affiliations scrutinized, against a growing backdrop of international anxiety. For individuals, the psychological toll accrues steadily, shaped by years spent navigating uncertainty. Every unexpected call, every knock at the door after dark, becomes a source of anxiety. Some respond with stoicism. Others, especially the young, choose to disengage, to quietly exit the academic and scientific arenas for paths less fraught with shadow. The wider public, too, is conditioned by these cycles. Stories passed down within families through whispered cautionary tales reinforce the message that risk is omnipresent and that trust is a precious, sometimes scarce, resource. Across borders, these patterns are noticed and, in some cases, mirrored. Other nations, neighbors, and adversaries alike strengthen their own security and intelligence services, mindful of the power of both real and imagined operations. In a world where stories fuel suspicion, everyone becomes a potential player in an ongoing, uncertain game. Thus, the legacy of Operation Narnia is inscribed not only in brief headlines or confidential dossiers, but in the rituals, precautions, and wary glances that now form the rhythm of life for those at the center and even on the periphery of the world's most elusive intelligence battles. At the silent crossroads of myth and reality, we find ourselves at the apex of unknowing, the place between waking and sleep, where all the evidence, rumors, and whispers about Operation Narnia gather but never quite resolve. Here, both the facts and their interpretations swirl together, a gentle storm simmering behind closed eyes. Even now, years after assassinations, unexplained accidents, and sudden disappearances, certainty remains just out of reach. There are only layers, one story nested inside another, each promising a greater clarity that never fully materializes. Each detail, an intercepted message, a half-remembered conversation, a faded photograph, adds to a shifting mosaic, making the pattern more intricate, not less. Imagine the intelligence official poring over the case files at midnight, documents spread before her like tarot cards, searching for a sequence that might yield meaning. Or think of the young scientist in Tehran lying awake, the faint hum of a security camera outside his window, contemplating the fine line between pursuit and peril. Both live with consequences shaped as much by what cannot be proven as by what is known. For the wider world, Operation Narnia sits at the limits of comprehension, its name a portal not to certainty but to a land of perpetual intrigue. Journalists draft their final paragraphs with gentle hedges. Analysts attend conference panels, their answers winding and conditional. For every pattern discerned, there's a counterstory. For every assertion, a denial. The legend stirs in the flicker of digital forums, in footnotes and quietly altered government reports, persisting precisely because it cannot be pinned down. As you rest on the edge of sleep, allow yourself to drift through this landscape where questions hang in the dusk and answers always hover just out of reach. In this world, the rhythm is one of patient waiting, gentle repetition, and cautious wonder. History's mysteries do not always end with bold revelations. Frequently, they beg to be inhabited, understood well enough to be respected, but not so well as to lose their shadowed poetry. At the apex of unknowing, the mind is free to wander. Perhaps here is where Operation Narnia's truest legacy lies, in the questions we carry, in the stories retold, and in the quiet, resilient search for meaning even in the absence of clear answers. Now, as dawn's first pale light begins to edge softly around history's darker corners, let us look closely at what stands on solid ground. Sifting through rumor and myth, we gather the patchwork of facts that remain calmly after the long night. We know that several prominent Iranian nuclear scientists have indeed lost their lives or vanished under mysterious, often violent circumstances. Their names, Masoud Ali Mohammadi, Majid Shahriari, Daryash Rizanagate, Mustafa Ahmadi, Rozan, Mohsen, Fikrizada, and others, are etched into official records, mourned publicly by their nation, and quietly analyzed by observers the world over. There are undeniable patterns, attacks frequently linked to motorbikes, magnetic bombs, or carefully orchestrated ambushes, events unfolding not in distant laboratories but on ordinary city streets, amidst the daily routines of modern Iran. Iranian authorities, with increasing urgency, have blamed foreign intelligence, most often Israel, sometimes hinting at American or Western collaboration. Israeli officials continue their deep silence. On rare occasions, retired Mossad chiefs or political leaders offer ambiguous statements, neither claiming nor fully denying involvement. International investigative bodies, for their part, confirm only what can be verified: the timing of attacks, the professional backgrounds of the targets, the lack of clear alternate culprits. United Nations reports may reference malicious acts, but refrain from direct attribution. Security analysts map timelines and modus operandi, noting consistency with past Mossad operations, yet cautioning that the world of covert action is one of misdirection, false flags, and carefully crafted public faces. There are also moments of rare clarity, clear evidence painstakingly assembled after an attack, fragments of devices, technical details of remote weapons or surveillance intercepts, admissions by suspects caught in dragnet security sweeps. Still, these facts exist like islands in a sea of uncertainty, visible for a time, but never offering a complete view of the currents beneath. In all this, the name Operation Narnia itself occupies an uncertain place, a persistent rumor, never authoritatively confirmed, yet so evocative it has become a part of the story's architecture. With patience, we begin to see that the facts, though essential, are never, by themselves, the whole story. They are the foundation on which legends are built, the touchstones to which myth returns for legitimacy. After the dust of each incident settles, the official responses begin. A dance of silence, measured denial, and subtle implication. This choreography shapes not just international perception, but the very contours of what the world considers possible or true. From the Israeli side, government spokespeople, prime ministers, and intelligence chiefs maintain a consistent, almost ritualistic silence. Journalists' questions about assassinations or sabotage are deflected with a knowing smile or a carefully chosen phrase. We do not comment on reports of this nature. At times, a former official allows a hint to slip through, a veiled nod to complex operations keeping Israel safe, or the simple acknowledgement that Iran must not have nuclear weapons by any means necessary. These remarks, rehearsed in their ambiguity, fan the flames of suspicion without providing substance. In Iran, the rhetoric is more forceful and direct. Statements from leaders, clerics, and the families of victims frame each attack as an act of terrorism, martyrdom, and international aggression. Investigations are announced, and confessions are sometimes broadcast on state TV, though observers note that these often raise as many questions as they answer. Conspiracy is treated as a certainty, foreign plotting as a constant. This narrative serves both to unite the country and to warn those inside its borders that extraordinary vigilance is always required. Western governments, caught between alliances and diplomacy, issue their own carefully balanced responses. They condemn violence in principle and express concern, but rarely name names or assign blame. Press briefings emphasize the importance of non-proliferation and stability, but leave the identity of possible actors suspended in mid-air. Within this atmosphere, unspoken truths accumulate. Understandings shared in official corridors but never traced in ink or confessed aloud. In the intelligence world, such truths form the unacknowledged scaffolding of strategy and caution. They enable states to act, or to refrain from acting, without triggering open confrontation. This deniability is as much a tool as any weapon, or surveillance technology, allowing bold actions to exist in a twilight of possibility. For the public, this perpetual silence is itself an answer. The lack of denial, the absence of surprise, the way politicians and analysts circle around the subject, all of these reinforce the shape of a reality seldom illuminated directly, but deeply, collectively understood. And so, in the quiet gap between fact and confession, between certainty and myth, the truth lingers, half-spoken, half-hidden, casting its long, subtle influence over both history and memory. In the aftermath of every mysterious event, an explosion on a Tehran street, the sudden hush of a vanished scientist, there comes the slow, methodical work of investigation. For police officers and security officials in Iran, this work is both routine and weighted with extraordinary pressure. Each incident is treated as a point on a growing constellation of intrigue, and every grain of evidence becomes precious. Teams descend upon the scene, marking the outline of twisted wreckage or shattered glass as dawn creeps over narrow roads. Photographs are taken in silence. Fragments are carefully collected, catalogued, analyzed in forensics labs. Each tiny piece scrutinized for some trace of origin, a serial number here, a chemical residue there. Officials pore over phone records, security footage, and the digital echoes of last conversations. Suspicious vehicles are traced as far as possible, and witnesses, often reluctant, sometimes afraid, recount what little they saw in muted tones. Sometimes a breakthrough seems imminent. A suspect is found, a confession broadcast, biographies and motivations displayed to the nation. But more often, the trail turns cold. The tools of modern sabotage, remote detonation, false identities, disposable devices, are chosen precisely for their ability to vanish without a trace. Many of the best investigators come to know the boundaries of their own reach, recognizing the fine art of misdirection at work. International observers, too, become part of this process. The International Atomic Energy Agency and other neutral bodies may scrutinize the implications for Iran's nuclear program, urging restraint and further examination. In open forums and classified workshops alike, experts debate the likely methodology, the technology involved, and the hand behind it all. Yet despite the best efforts, the heart of each case often remains elusive, a point where proof gives way to pattern and correlation, not incontrovertible evidence. For journalists and outside researchers, the work is even more challenging. Access is limited, records are closely held or manipulated for public consumption. Even when tantalizing information is obtained, an intercepted communication, a photograph of a suspected agent, it rarely offers the clear, unambiguously factual resolution sought by both readers and officials. Thus the limits of proof become a kind of silent conclusion. Investigations produce facts, but they are inevitably partial, always awaiting the wider context that never fully arrives. The cumulative weight of many almost certain judgments can hint at a truth, but seldom allow the story to be told with full certainty. The mystery persists, not for lack of effort, but because in this shadow world, some questions resist even the most patient, careful pursuit of answers. Where certainty fails, myth rises quietly to fill the emptiness. For each unanswered question, each unexplained silence or untraceable event, legends bloom in dim corners, shaped and cultivated by collective hope, fear, and curiosity. Operation Narnia, enigmatic from its first whispered mention, becomes more than a name. It is a vessel for the inexpressible, a container for what cannot be captured in lists, dates, or dossiers. These myths draw from the details left behind, a code name, glimpsed in a leak, a pattern of casualties that matches no official explanation. Around such fragments, communities build stories, a clandestine force, perfectly precise and omnipresent, slipping in and out of reality as easily as one might pass through a wardrobe in a children's tale. In these stories, heroes and villains are drawn in sharper lines, motivations are clarified, and actions acquire a symbolic resonance that facts alone cannot bear. The need for narrative is as old as human memory. Myths act as anchors, offering familiar shapes and recurring themes in a world where confusion is the norm. For the public, they transform fear into caution, mourning into a sense of righteous resistance, and uncertainty into stories retold over tea or in the glow of television screens late at night. For governments and intelligence agencies, the careful encouragement or manipulation of myth becomes strategic, an additional tool for destabilizing adversaries, reassuring allies, or obscuring true intentions. Legends are also adaptable, resilient to the passage of time. Each new detail, each hint or denial is woven into the story. A new informant emerges, a failed plot is revealed, a scientist survives an attack. The narrative expands, incorporating both tragedy and relief, glory and warning, always growing, never quite finishing. Myths are both shield and lens, providing comfort but also subtly shaping how future events are understood, remembered, and responded to. For those who dwell closest to these stories, the scientists, their families, the intelligence operatives. On all sides, myth exerts a quieter, more haunting pressure. It demands a place in history, even when history is silent. Myths, once constructed, refuse to be unmade. They linger in the empty spaces, in every gap investigation cannot fill, in every question that greets the slow hours of the night. Thus, between what is known and what is never to be known, legends like Operation Narnia thrive, resilient, evolving, and possessed of a quiet authority that no official report can fully dispel. Beyond the haze of legend and rumor, a quieter but equally momentous reality persists. The relentless work of science, unfolding in the shadows of secrecy and ambition. Iran's nuclear program is, at its core, an enormous and complex scientific enterprise built on decades of research, trial and error, and the painstaking accumulation of knowledge. Yet every breakthrough is reached beneath a ceiling of watchfulness. Every discovery shadowed by suspicion and risk. Within fortified laboratories, engineers and physicists labor over the mysteries of atoms. The air is heavy with the smell of ozone and heated metal, the soft thrum of machinery a constant backdrop to calculation and hypothesis. Work proceeds according to strict protocols. ID badges are checked at multiple gates. Computers are firewalled and monitored. Research notes, often handwritten and divided among trusted associates. In every corner, the awareness of being watched by both allies and adversaries is ever present. Scientific ambition, in this context, is intimately bound to secrecy. Researchers often do not know the full scope of the projects they contribute to, their knowledge compartmentalized in the name of security. The allure of contributing to a grand national endeavor, the allure, too, of international recognition, coexists with the weight of real danger. The memory of lost colleagues infuses every moment with solemnity, reminding all involved that scientific pursuit here can have mortal consequences. Yet, for all the care and caution, progress is real and measurable. Uranium is enriched, reactors, assembled papers circulated in quiet meetings or carefully redacted emails. These advances are tracked by a watchful world. Intelligence satellites glide overhead. Data is scraped from obscure publications, and inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency visit with a carefully controlled regularity. Those outside these circles, observing from a distance, often see only the surface. The international debates, the bursts of tension at negotiation tables, the periodic headlines. But beneath the surface, science persists. It moves at its own pace, sometimes slowed or scattered by strikes, sometimes invigorated by setbacks, always shaped by the interplay of necessity and invention. It is in this realm of practical achievement, less glamorous perhaps than the world of espionage, but just as consequential, that legend and fact must finally meet. The realities of Iran's nuclear ambitions and the extraordinary efforts to shape or halt them are borne out not just in the stories told, but in the quiet, tireless work of those who measure, calculate, and dream beneath layers of both protection and caution. Even as investigations accumulate and scientific progress is measured in careful increments, alternative truths glide beneath the surface, shaping perceptions as powerfully as any fact. These are not deliberate lies, nor simple fictions, but narratives, formed by the ambiguity that endless secrecy brings. The stories that fill the space between silence and certainty, refusing to fade even when evidence suggests otherwise. Within Iran, these stories often take on a conspiratorial character. Some believe that every setback, every death, every technical flaw is orchestrated by hostile powers, their reach uncanny and limitless. In this telling, Operation Narnia is neither rumor nor code, but an unquestioned reality, a campaign whose agents slip through borders with supernatural skill, against which resistance becomes both a matter of survival and national pride. Others, seeking comfort or explanation, may suspect internal betrayal, rivals settling scores under the guise of foreign sabotage. For some, the story grows more personal, a sense that their own actions, or even mere proximity to a targeted project, might mark them for danger. Across the Gulf, Israeli and Western commentators craft counter-narratives. They debate the motives of Iranian authorities, sometimes suggesting that stories of external plots cloak domestic pressures, purges, or simple systemic failure. There is speculation that some attacks, attributed to sophisticated agencies, might prove upon close inspection to be the result of fierce internal rivalries or accidental misfortune, a tangled web whose strands are impossible to separate with confidence. Into this mixed step the voices of the international press, exiled scholars, and social media accounts, both real and counterfeit. Alternative truths proliferate, stories of double agents feeding reports to both sides, American high-tech sabotage programs lingering in the background, international watchdogs unwittingly used to transmit coded messages, each tale layered with the anxieties of the teller and the audience, takes on a life of its own, circulating ceaselessly in online forums, cafe conversations, and confidential briefings. What endures is a deep uncertainty recognition, quietly acknowledged by all, that the whole story will likely evade any single listener, researcher, or policymaker. These alternative truths nestle into the rhythms of daily life. They comfort, provoke, and warn. They can bind a community together or scatter its trust to the wind. Over years, they become as real as any physical detail, shaping behavior and expectation, determining what is possible and what is believable. Operation Narnia, in this context, is more than a legend or a code word. It is a reminder of the human need for explanation, for pattern and meaning. Even if the pattern can never be fully described, in the silence left by missing facts, stories bloom, refusing to fade, echoing through history and into the soft, turning hours of night. Out of the silence and confusion, life persists. Even the thickest shadows eventually yield small, lasting lessons. Subtle wisdoms drawn from years of moving between risk and discovery, caution and ambition, for the scientists, operatives, and ordinary citizens touched by the events surrounding Operation Narnia. Such lessons are both deeply personal and broadly instructive, woven quietly into the pulse of memory. The most immediate lesson is one of caution. In workplaces and homes, heightened vigilance becomes habitual. Doors are double-locked, meetings are kept discreet, friendships marked by careful boundaries. The hope that science and scholarship might exist free from threat is replaced by an acceptance that the search for knowledge sometimes draws its own circle of danger. Yet caution is not only about security, it is also about empathy, an awareness that every colleague, every neighbor, is carrying private burdens and calculations shaped by the uncertain world around them. Resilience, too, emerges as a silent companion. Projects halted by loss resume again with steady hands, if more deliberate steps. Out of grief and fear come new routines, new rituals. A mourning shared among cautious friends, small acts of remembrance paid to those lost, a deliberate choice to continue teaching, to keep exploring, to persist even when the cost is clear. In this way, the resilience of Iran's scientific community, and those who support it or challenge it from afar, emerges quietly, day after day. Memory plays an equally crucial role. The stories, half uttered, half withheld, become the foundation. For generations who will inherit the uncertainty, some memories are preserved in official ceremonies and monuments, others in the gentle recollections passed within families or among colleagues over a cup of tea. What is remembered is not only tragedy, but endurance, the pride in small accomplishments, the bonds forged in hardship, the knowledge that uncertainty is also, sometimes, a space for creativity and quiet heroism. In the wider world, these lessons ripple outward. Policymakers and diplomats reconsider the wisdom of escalation and indirect warfare, weighing short-term gains against the long arc of consequence. Intelligence agencies, shaped by the labyrinthine games of truth and myth, refine their codes of silence and learn, perhaps, the value of patience. For the larger public, the lessons are more philosophical, a recognition that many of history's most compelling stories resist easy endings, leaving us humbler, quieter, more attuned to complexity. Thus from the shadows emerge lessons that, though quietly spoken and often unheralded, persist. Life carries on, tempered but not diminished, as memory, caution, and resilience quietly become the tools for navigating an uncertain dawn. As we ease back from the fevered edges of history's uncertainty, the stillness of the present moment settles around us with gentle reassurance. In contrast to the anxious rhythms and whispered tension of Operation Narnia's world, the calm of now offers a profound comfort, a reminder that whatever shadows the past may cast, there is still space for safety, rest, and the renewal of hope inside quiet homes. Far from laboratories with coded locks and hushed corridors, the rituals of ordinary life gently reassert themselves. A kettle steams softly in the kitchen, children's laughter drifts through open windows, and distant traffic hums a steady, familiar tune. The dangers and ambiguities that haunt the lives of distant scientists or agents seem, for a moment, safely contained within the margins of story. Here, in the present, concern can be put aside, if only for the length of a night's sleep. This contrast is more than circumstance. It is a marker of progress, of the peace and security many can now take for granted. The relentless turning of the world from turmoil toward tranquility is reflected in 1,000 small comforts. the freedom to study or work without fear of unseen hands, the luxury of curiosity unburdened by survival, the sweet rhythm of a day shaped by possibility rather than vigilance. To remember the pressures of the past is not merely to revisit anxiety, but to savor what has been gained. The calm with which we meet the present, the ease with which we move through the familiar, is magnified by the knowledge of past struggle. Each secure step, each undisturbed night's rest, is a testament to the resilience not only of individuals but of communities, nations, and the wider human spirit. As the mysteries of Operation Narnia fade into the pre-dawn quiet, let the comfort of your own space settle around you. Warm blankets, the soft hush of evening, the knowledge that for now you are far from those tangled. Legends, the rhythm of your breath, the softness of your room, and the gentle ebb of curiosity are themselves reminders of how the world can turn from shadows toward gentle, waking light. Now, as we find ourselves poised between fascination and rest, it is time to reflect upon what remains after the telling of such a story. Legends like Operation Narnia do more than linger as tales of espionage and power. They press quietly upon the boundaries of our understanding, inviting us to dwell, if only briefly, at the threshold between what can be known and what is destined to remain a mystery. It's here, in the gentle pause at the end of inquiry, that we realize how the greatest secrets do not always demand resolution. Instead, they ask us to accept ambiguity, a state both unsettling and strangely comforting. History's most enduring enigmas, whether shadowed by fear, loss, ingenuity, or hope, remind us that the search for truth is a journey, not always a destination. The echo of unanswered questions is itself an invitation to imagine, to empathize, to gently stretch the limits of our certainty. For the families who mourn, for the scientists who persevere, for the diplomats and agents who keep delicate confidences, what survives is often less the content of revelation than the shape of resilience and the persistence of memory. Each retelling, whether in an official archive, a whispered story, or a fleeting reference in another language, preserves something essential, even as the details blur. Even for those of us standing far away from Tehran's streets or Tel Aviv's corridors of power, the memory of such mysteries enriches our sense of the world. They remind us that, beneath the everyday surface, extraordinary events are always possible. Ordinary people, thrust by history into the path of the unknown, may become the authors of new chapters, chapters written as much in empathy and endurance as they are in code names and covert acts. So here, at the threshold, where legend and fact intertwine, we can allow ourselves a moment of gentle awe. Mysteries like Operation Narnia, with all their haunting half-truths, leave us with an abiding curiosity, a slightly wider sense of possibility, and the calm reassurance that it is all right sometimes not to know everything. Now, as the clock slips quietly toward the gentlest part of the night, the lingering notes of mystery soften and dissolve into calm. We have journeyed together through tangled stories and elusive truths, walked in the footsteps of vanished minds, and listened for echoes in the dark corridors of secret history. And yet, as dreams gather around you, the need to solve the puzzle fades, replaced by the soothing rhythm of curiosity gently laid to rest. This is the natural place where every great mystery, no matter how grand or unresolved, gives way to comfort. All the unanswered questions, the labyrinths of evidence and legend, drift beyond reach, their sharp edges rounded by the hush of the present moment. The myth of Operation Narnia, with all its silences and uncertainties, becomes simply one more lullaby in the archive of night, a softly turning thought, inviting you to relinquish the urge for answers and trust the wisdom of unknowing. Listen now to the world as it settles. Outside, the wind is gentle. Within, the familiar weight of blankets, the subtle warmth of breath and heartbeat anchor you in safety, far from distant intrigue. The cares of history, the suspense of secrets, release their hold, leaving you free to embrace rest and peace. Let your mind wander, one last time, through snow-lit lamplight and quiet corridors. Imagine the scientists returning home to their families at dusk, their stories unfinished yet dignified. Feel the embrace of resilience and memory, history's true gifts, waiting quietly for those who seek, question, and ultimately let go. As sleep gathers around you, know that the world's mysteries will keep until morning, their answers content to wait in the in-between. For now, allow yourself to rest in the gentle certainty of the present, the only true refuge from both remembered shadows and imagined wonders. Good night, and may curiosity gently guide you from this world of intrigue into the deep restorative quiet at the heart of sleep.